The only piece of glass that was recovered by Michael Proctor himself was the one that was on the bumper.
Oh.
And so the implication, the allegation by Karen Reed's team is, did he plant that there? After a multi-car accident in Canton, Massachusetts, a state trooper texted a colleague not to rush to the scene. And his exact words from a sworn court filing were, quote, "Actually take your time. I saw an N-word was involved, so I wouldn't rush if you're working. Let them die." That trooper is Michael Proctor, and his name should be familiar. He was the lead investigator in the Karen Reed case. And this isn't a new allegation about the night that John O'Keefe died. It's a text from years of his personal life, and it's now sitting in the public record as the centerpiece of an 87-page lawsuit that isn't really about Karen Reed's guilt or innocence anymore. It's about what 2 police departments knew and what they chose not to know.
I'm Nikita.
And I'm Torella.
And this is This Feels Criminal. And today is part 1 of Torella catching us all up on all things civil lawsuit, Karen Reed, Canton, Massachusetts. It's going to be a wild ride, guys. And remember, if you are a patron, part 2 is going to be ready for you right away. You don't have to wait for it. And if you're not, that's okay, because we'll be back with you on Thursday for part 2. So, Torella, catch us up. What's going on?
All right. So just to let you guys know, we're not relitigating whether Karen Reed killed John O'Keefe. 2 juries in a very long public argument have already been going on that question, right? We've covered the case already on the show previously. What we're covering today is different. It's her lawsuit, and it argues that these officers' own words and conduct reveal this culture of institutional rot by the departments that employed them, and how that culture would then affect their ability to investigate and the way that they investigate cases and things like that. So just so you know, we're not going back over that trial. We've already done that. We're focusing on the civil side. There's a few different lawsuits, so I'll kind of like let you know each different one and all of those things. But let us get into it. Now, I say that, but I am going to give you like the tiniest little refresher and primer, because some people don't know this case, which is like, I mean, it is my absolute Roman Empire.
Yes, it is.
In case you don't know the criminal case that goes along with these civil complaints, January the 29th, 2022, Boston police officer John O'Keefe was found dead outside a home in Canton, Massachusetts. That was 34 Fairview. Hours after a night out with his girlfriend, Karen Reed, and I'm going to say friends in quotes. The prosecutor's theory was that Karen Reed was driving drunk and she backed her SUV into John O'Keefe and then left him there to die. Yes. Her defense was that she never struck him, that he was more likely killed inside the house, and then the scene was staged to look like a hit and run to remove suspicion from the people inside the home. The lead investigator was Massachusetts State Trooper Michael Proctor, and during her first trial in 2024, he admitted on the stand to sending derogatory text about Karen Reed during the investigation, calling her things like a, quote, whack job. Is his favorite, well, I thought it was his favorite word.
It's his second favorite word.
It's up there with some other words that
we're not allowed to say.
It's terrible. He commented on her body. He talked about searching for nude photos on her phone. These are like hours into this investigation, okay? Now, on the stand, he said these texts were juvenile, they were unprofessional, they were regrettable, and he positioned them as like one-off comments. He said, well, I was angry because a fellow officer had been, in his words, waffled, which I guess means hit by a car, but it just made him, right, it just made him so emotional that, you know, it got the best of him, right? Like normally that's not how he would behave during an investigation, but because he was so emotional, like this was a fellow officer, you know, what was I supposed to do? I
find it interesting that he's so overwhelmed and frustrated and angry, and so his default setting is body shaming women and looking for nude photos of them on their phone.
And not doing a good investigation.
Yeah, weird like, how that works. Yeah, exactly. Like, this is your friend that you care so much about getting justice for, but also not. But you
didn't record any interviews. You didn't write any reports. You didn't go inside the home. You didn't come to the scene the day of the, like, okay, all right. So, all right.
Well, he was so overcome with emotion.
Well, sure. So the first trial in 2024 ended in a mistrial with a hung jury. And in the second trial, because they went forward, oh my God, did they go forward? In June of 2025, she was acquitted of second-degree murder, manslaughter, and leaving the scene. And she was only convicted of a single OUI count, which is like our DUI, and she just got probation. Now, between the two trials, Michael Proctor was fired by the Massachusetts State Police in March of 2025, which is actually extraordinarily difficult to do, to get fired. So he's that terrible.
Wow.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And he did not testify in the second trial, obviously. Sean Goode, a Canton police sergeant, so we're going to talk about him a whole lot today. I did not realize in watching these two trials how connected Sean Goode and Michael Proctor were.
Oh.
And it's very important.
Okay.
So he was a Canton police officer. So this happened in Canton. It ended up being turned over to the Massachusetts State Police because Canton was conflicted off. The brother of the homeowner where John O'Keefe was found, Brian Albert, is the homeowner. His brother is Kevin Albert. He's a detective at Canton Police Department. So Canton PD is the first to arrive on the scene. And then they're like, we're going to like remove ourselves, right? Like we don't want to have the appearance of impropriety. They that all up, but whatever. So Sean Goode works for the Canton PD, and he was one of the first on the scene, okay? He testified at the first trial. He's part of it, okay? He remained on the job, and then all of a sudden, this year, well, last year, he gets placed on administrative leave, and this is after some Proctor's texts come out, which we're going to go into all of, and I'm like, uh-oh, that feels connected. And now he is no longer employed. Again, all of this ties together. We're going to talk about all of it. So really the crux of this civil complaint, and again, there are several, but this one is, what did the police departments know? When should they have known some of these things? What did they do about it? Did they turn a blind eye? We've got supervisors who are involved in some of these text threads. So like,
perfect.
What are we doing here, right? So now let's get to the complaint. On June 4th, 2026, Karen Reed filed suit in Bristol Superior Court. This is civil action number, oh my gosh, this is a lot of numbers and letters, 2673 CV 489.
Love it.
As you well know.
Obviously.
Against the Massachusetts State Police and the town of Canton. So the opening line of the complaint sets the whole tone. It says, quote, the not guilty verdict in Commonwealth versus Karen Reed on June 18th, 2025 did not merely end a wrongful prosecution. It shone an unflinching spotlight on something the Massachusetts State Police and the town of Canton Police Department have spent years trying to conceal. An embedded culture of bigotry, misogyny, systemic failures, and institutional rot at the very core of both organizations.
To quote my favorite attorney, Marshall, boom, lawyered.
Boom, exactly. I wish that I could say that that opening statement is hyperbole in some way or overly dramatic, but it is so very not, and you're just so not ready. Oh, and I should also let you guys know, we're not going to be saying the derogatory terms that these men said, but you are going to gather what they said. And it is horrific on every single solitary level of humanity. I just want you to know that it's going to be absolutely terrible. Okay. All right. So the claims in her complaint are negligent hiring, training, supervision, 1 count against MSP, 1 against Canton, plus civil conspiracy against both. And this is everything having to do with the Karen Reed case is one of one. There's nothing else like it. I mean, it's all of it is just absolutely insane. But
it also makes me wonder how prevalent this is in other places, and it just hasn't. Maybe they've been better at covering it up, or it just hasn't been able to come to light. Because I mean, obviously, if Karen Reed did not get the publicity, let's say, or like the coverage that it did, would we know about this? Because I feel like the only reason this is getting the level of investigation and discovery and all of the things that it is because it became a nationwide issue. Because how many times did this come up beforehand by other people and it just was like, yeah, we looked into it, move along.
Exactly.
But because Karen Reed became so high profile, now the whole country is like, what the hell is going on, Canton?
Exactly. And
You
how
know what I
many other
mean?
defendants have been railroaded and how
Exactly.
many other,
Yeah.
who just didn't have the power or the money or whatever,
Yeah.
or the
Or
public
even just
backing.
I was gonna say the public backing to push it forward.
Exactly. Which is really scary.
Very
It's
scary.
really scary. All right. So, like I said, there are multiple civil lawsuits going on at the same time. So, initially, Karen Reed and her team tried to bring all of her civil complaints into one lawsuit filed back in November of 2025. But there is some of this I don't 100% exactly get. MSP and Canton refused to waive their 6-month waiting period. It was like a required waiting period. I don't know. And they refused to waive it. I don't know. Under Massachusetts law.
Okay.
And the individual defendants, so we'll talk about the names of those people. They got their case. So she was going to sue all of them in the same thing.
Okay.
They got their case moved to federal court. Massachusetts State Police can't be sued in federal court. They are immune there. So once the waiting period ran out, Reed had to file this separate state court action to get MSP and Canton directly.
Okay.
I don't exactly understand all of that, but that is what happened.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not familiar with, again, I'm not a trial lawyer anyway. And every state and jurisdiction has its own weird, quirky things anyway.
Massachusetts has a lot of weird stuff.
Yeah. Well, no kidding. But yeah, I don't know what a 6-month waiting period would be. I would assume it would have to do with if you're going to sue them for improper conduct to have a waiting, like not a cooling off period, but like a period of time in between the incident and being able to sue them to allow for things to like settle out, shake out, whatever, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting that she had to do this separately because that then forces her to sue people separately, which costs double the money now because we've got to do this twice.
Right. And
I think she's justified though, so I don't blame her.
Yeah, exactly. And if they had waived the period, a lot of these texts wouldn't have come out yet.
Ooh.
So it kind of, from what I understand, bit them in the ass a little bit, which is, I'm loving.
Yeah.
All right. So there are 2 separate lawsuits. So we've got MSP and Canton. We've also got her suing some of the witnesses in the criminal case. So these are referred to as the House defendants. I'm going to call them the Haas defendants because one of them Googled Haas long to die in the cold. And so anytime there is a how in anything, the lore is you say Haas. Okay. So the Haas defendants are Brian Albert, homeowner, Nicole Albert, homeowner, Jennifer McCabe, their sister/sister-in-law, Matthew McCabe, Jennifer's husband, Brian Higgins. He is a good friend of Brian Albert's. He had an office at Canton PD. He is a DEA or ATF agent, maybe ATF. Oh, was. I don't know if he still is. So this is the group that Karen Reed accuses of staging a cover-up inside 34 Fairview the night that John O'Keefe died. There are also investigators individually named alongside the Haas defendant. So these are former trooper Michael Proctor, Sergeant Yuri Buchanek. He is with the MSP. I believe he's been demoted. Lieutenant Brian Tully. He is now retired. So those are the 3 that she claims manufactured evidence to frame her for John O'Keefe's death. Which, again,
they let him retire?
They let any of these people retire. The only one that's been fired is Michael Proctor.
It's interesting to me, and I wonder, I mean, I guess there's not anything to do about it now, but if you're allowed to retire, then you retain benefits, right? Like you get your retirement benefits because you weren't let go. So as more of this, which I mean, I guess they're not being sued criminally at this point.
Right, yeah.
But I don't like that. I don't like that.
I don't like that either. If I were a taxpayer there, I would be pretty pissed.
Well, if I were a taxpayer there, I'd be pretty pissed about the whole thing, about how much money we spent on this stupid Karen Reed trial to get a DUI conviction. Are you kidding?
To get a DUI conviction.
To get a DUI. This is what you just...
They paid a special prosecutor like $500,000 because none of the prosecutors, I think, in the DA's office, other than the one who prosecuted it the first time, would touch it. I mean, it's insane. It's insane. Yeah. So the others have been moved to the federal court. The Haas defendants removed it to federal court. Karen Reed did not. That was a them thing. They wanted to do that. But the complaint is blunt about what it thinks the lawsuit is really for. It says, to be clear, however, this complaint transcends Miss Reed's personal and actionable grievance. Rather, it is a clarion call for reform and accountability.
Love it.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about former trooper Michael Proctor and Sean Goode. Okay.
His name's not as fun to say.
It's not. People call him Goody, though, but I don't like him. Yeah.
It makes me think of the Scarlet Letter. Because Goody and Proctor. Yeah, remember? Did you read that book?
I did read it.
Okay. I didn't know if you knew how to read then, so I wasn't sure.
Well, I didn't do a good job. But I managed to get through it.
Well, that's good. I could go on a rant about that book, but we'll do that another time. Carry on.
Yeah. Maybe you should teach me about reading on
I will. And I'll teach you about the Scarlet Letter too.
Yeah. There you go.
We'll do Hooked on Phonics with Torella.
The complaint's opening description of both men does not pull any punches, okay? It says,
I love it.
Quote, former MSP detective Michael Proctor and former CPD Sergeant Sean Goode are virulent bigots whose hatred for anyone and everyone different from themselves permeates their every action. They are not officers who occasionally voiced an offensive remark. They are men whose written and recorded communications, there are voice notes that they send to each other.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Establish entrenched and unrepentant hatred for women, Black Americans, Asian Americans, Jews, Hispanics, Arabs, and gay people.
Oh, so anyone who's not a straight white man.
Correct.
Got it.
And specifically a straight white police officer, it feels like.
Yep. Well.
Also, they are, remember Mark Furman from the O.J. Simpson trial, and he fucked everything up because he was super racist, and he was kind of like the racist police officer? Not anymore. It's Michael Proctor and Sean Goode. I cannot overstate the disgusting amount of shit that they texted each other. I cannot fucking overstate it. Mark Furman, who? They make him look like rainbows and butterflies. I'm not even kidding. This is insane.
Wild. There needs to be like a test to be a public servant that's like, hi, do you hate gay people? Do you hate Black people? Do you hate people who are not white in general? How do you feel about women? And if you can't answer those in an appropriate manner, perhaps this isn't the job for you.
It's not the job for you.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because you're supposed to serve and protect the community.
The community.
Not the straight white men who are police officers in the community. Although arguably they didn't even do a good job of that shit either. So like.
Exactly.
Whatever.
The messages span 2013 to roughly 2023. They are over a decade. They are sent between the two of them and a small circle of friends in a friendship that the complaint says goes back to high school. Again, Canton is a small town. Everybody kind of knows everybody, at least knows of each other kind of thing.
Yeah.
So is it likely that even a state trooper would have some knowledge of some of the people if he lives in the area? Probably. What I did not understand was how entrenched Proctor was with some of these other officers. I knew that he was very close to the Albert family. That came out in the first trial. But I had no idea that he and Sean Goode were that good of friends. And the fact that Sean Goode was one of the first ones on the scene and like all this stuff. Anyway, it's crazy. So the crash text that opens the episode is one entry in a section the complaint titles. The literal title is, quote, Cesspool of Abject Hatred.
Ooh.
And a sample of what's attributed to Proctor. After visiting his old high school one time, he wrote that he saw, quote, more N-words in 10 minutes than the 4 years I spent there combined. Everywhere I looked, there was, he says, monkeys running around. Where the fuck did all these N-words come from?
Oh my God. Oh my God.
It gets worse. Discussing Detroit, he wrote, quote, Detroit should be destroyed along with places like Flint, Michigan. They are breeding grounds for N-words to run wild.
That's wild. Okay, first of all, that's a wild thought to just have pop in your brain. Number one. Let's say this thought does pop into your brain. The notion to write it down,
correct,
and share it is even crazier.
And the fact that this is what fucking pisses me off. So this little group of friends, I don't know who each of these texts was to, because they just sort of list them out as, you know, quotes. I don't know the exact dates. I don't know who exactly they were to, but typically it seems like these are to either other officers or his group of friends that he's known since high school, which obviously y'all all fucking peaked in high school. Why are you still friends with only the same fucking people and like whatever? Anyway, The fact that nobody ever said to him, like, what the fuck, dude?
Yes. Nobody called you on your shit.
Which means it's shared.
Yes,
it's at least accepted.
You had to feel comfortable enough to say that to someone.
Exactly.
Because you don't say that to people that you don't know, that you don't feel comfortable with, that you don't think are going to agree with you, or at the very least not challenge you on it. Like,
and there are thousands.
Insane.
There are thousands. This is not a couple of comments. Again, this is thousands. It's insane. On a whim one day, he texted somebody, quote, "It should be punch a N-word day in Canton today out of retribution. Any shine you see, blast in the face."
Retribution for what?
Oh, girl, I don't know.
Retribution for what?
Yeah, because he certainly hasn't been enjoying the privileges of being a straight white man.
No.
Ever.
In a position of power,
in a position of power, with no accountability whatsoever.
Yeah. He deserves retribution, Torella, obviously. Come on.
Exactly. It's not only racial, though. Referring to either a colleague or supervisor, he wrote, quote, and it just picks up, like, it's like 3 dots and it picks up here. A giant malignant. He does at least have the self-awareness to say, did I spell that right? He did the SP. He actually did spell it right. So whatever.
Does his phone not autocorrect him?
Apparently not. A giant malignant cunt.
Oh.
I pray to the heavens that some fucked up insect from the Amazon crawls up her vagina, hatches eggs, and the litter kills her by eating her from the inside out. And I am positive this is a woman who was like, challenged him in some way, maybe asked one single solitary clarifying question. He referred to the medical examiner in the Karen Reed case as, I believe, also a whack job cunt as well. Because she wouldn't put on there that he was hit by a car because there was no evidence of such.
Right. We don't like black people, obviously, because reasons, I don't know. And we don't like women who disagree with us.
We don't like women at all, but especially if they don't disagree with us.
But if they don't agree with us, then get out of here.
Get out of here. Other women he doesn't like are women he's in relationships with. So he also discussed having sex with a partner without consent while she slept.
Love that. That's
described
great.
in explicit detail in the filing, which the complaint list alongside his other messages about women as a pattern, again, not as an aside. It is not these one-off things or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that I'm saying any of this to you, okay?
Okay.
But here it comes. The complaint says, in brackets, referring to his then-girlfriend's anus.
Oh, okay.
Quote, "I can't even get fucking near that thing. I make every effort possible. I wait till she's asleep and I try to get at it. I try every effort possible. I try to get her hammered. I can't get anywhere near it. It's starting to piss me off. It's not cool."
Okay. I know he doesn't like women. Okay. But he already doesn't respect women. So has he considered hiring a sex worker for this specific thing that he wants?
No, because I think he thinks he's entitled to it for free.
Okay. I mean, that's fair, I guess, that he feels entitled. You know, that is his girlfriend. So
well, and
she can't say no.
Here's what's concerning to me about where they said referring to his then girlfriend. They didn't say his ex-girlfriend. They didn't say an ex-girlfriend. They said then girlfriend. Don't you say my then boyfriend, now husband, my then girlfriend, now wife? So are we referring to his wife? He's married as of now. I would not doubt that marriage crumbles, but
if I am his partner and these messages come out, well, first of all, she has to know that he's tried everything to get at it. But having that put out publicly, like, maybe she did not realize the way he was speaking about her. Maybe she didn't realize
he's
the
trying
level
stuff when she's asleep.
Yeah, the level that he's taken this to.
He also, in some text messages, talk about needing a roofie or something, like trying to use a yeah.
Oh my God.
They also go back and forth. I know this is Sean Goode and him, because the text messages we have from Sean Goode came from Proctor's phone. I do not believe we have Sean Goode's phone.
But we got Proctor's. The best for him.
So what we have of Sean Goode's phone, I believe, came from Proctor. So it's safe to assume
just
those
their
are
conversation.
Them together.
Yeah.
Goode texts Proctor at some point something about like, And I don't know who Lisa is. I don't know if that's his wife's name. I don't know. But he's
Okay.
like, well, if Lisa would let me get a pic of her cans, I would share them with you because we're family here. Basically alluding to like any nude photos you get, you need to share with me. Like, share those with me. Send them to me. I would do the same for you. We're all family here. I'm like, ew,
So,
ew, ew, ew.
Let me see your girlfriend naked.
Or your wife.
/wife,
Could be,
/partner,
yeah.
/whoever.
/whoever.
Also, that is dissemination of pornographic materials, is it not?
Mm-hmm. And
especially if you do it without their knowledge or consent.
Exactly. And when the initial report came out of all the stuff they got off of his phone, which happened back in 2025, and we're just now getting some of the details of it.
Mm-hmm.
But when the initial report came out about that, what the DA's office said was that there were multiple like explicit images of that were shared with other people without that person's knowledge. They were sexual in nature, they were explicit, they were disseminated among other people, some of them including sexual assault victims.
Oh, wow.
Some of them I mean, it's
cute. That's real
it's
cute.
Really, really bad. I'm not pleased to read to you the next thing that I'm going to.
Okay.
He also discusses masturbating and ejaculating onto women as they sleep, but make sure, though, you don't do it to the smoke shows. Quote, part of like jacking off is to do it on an absolute pig, not some Brazilian smoke show top 12 model. You want a filthy pig that you just do dirty things to. Give me some thick girls with some meat who you can just shit on.
Okay, here's my takeaway. We have mommy issues. We have a lot of issues. We've got some major mommy issues. We need therapy.
We need some therapy.
Okay, because you've got some real fucked up fantasies. Now, if they're consensual, fine. It does not seem like that's the case, though.
No, because
the way you're speaking about it,
fall asleep.
No.
He also at one point talked about waiting till his wife was asleep and that he would, quote, it's disgusting, spray a rope on her, which I believe is his jizz.
Ew.
I don't like rope. I don't. Why is did like that? I don't know. I don't like that. I don't like that.
No, thank you.
I think he needs to go to a doctor too. Also, I think now would be a good point. So Mark is going to edit this video. Hi, Mark. We love you.
Hey.
I've selected a photo of Michael Proctor so that we can all see his fugly face while he talks about only getting with top 12 Brazilian fucking smoke shows. Like, as if. Okay. All right. So Sean Goode's contributions run alongside Michael Proctor's. He called Boston Mayor Michelle Wu a, quote, little cunt, and New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft a, quote, terrible cunty Jew. He wrote that, quote,
what did Robert Kraft do to anybody?
Well, it gets worse.
Oh.
He wrote, quote, Anne Franks is a lying cunt. And he called her Anne Franks,
the
not
child.
Anne Frank. Yeah, the child.
Okay.
The child murdered in the Holocaust. So
yeah, that one. Got it.
They also have, hundreds of text messages going back and forth. Anti-Semitic, very bad in nature. They go back and forth about how America fucked everything up because Hitler was onto something. They apparently very much admire Hitler and his work.
All things that, you're really looking for in someone in a position of power. No red
with
flags
a gun
here.
and a badge. A gun and a badge. Yeah. All right.
Goodness.
Now, you guys remember we covered the Sandra Birchmore case. We did a 2-part deep dive into the Sandra Birchmore case, which is here in the same area, Stoughton, but very close to Canton. A police officer, Matthew Farwell, has been indicted on her murder. We did that in December 2025. So if you want to hear the whole thing, you can go there. But this has to do with her murder. So in discussing Sandra Birchmore, now remember her death was originally ruled a suicide. And now it has been ruled a homicide, and we have somebody facing prosecution for that. Sean Goode wrote to his friends, quote, that chick was a borderline R word.
Wow, okay.
So we're using the R word, which I didn't think anybody did since the 90s, but apparently we're doing that too.
Yeah, that's, man, just, I don't even know. They're covering all the bases.
They're covering all the bases, and we're not done. So another thing that Goode did, that we have his text is and so now I wonder if this is if we do have his phone records, because we have a text from him to, it just says, the complaint just says warning a friend. It doesn't say Proctor specifically.
Okay.
So it says warning a friend to, you know, if he's going to continue what appears to be the regular practice of driving drunk, which appears to be the Canton pastime, by the way. Everybody on January 29th, 2022 was driving drunk, including all the police officers and everybody. And Brian Higgins drove drunk from 34 Fairview to Canton Police Department and then home and continued drink. Like, anyway, that's what they do there, okay? But he writes, quote, sobriety checkpoint on 138 by the trail side tonight. Please stay away tonight. Can't help you if you get caught. Too many troopers and Milton PD. Keep this info between us. Not supposed to do that. We're definitely blurring the lines of, like, if you have personal views like they have personal views, you definitely shouldn't have a gun and a badge. You should not be in law enforcement and have a position of power and things like that. But we do also have at least text evidence of them being okay to use that power in a way that is contradictory to, you know, maybe like the rules and regulations and stuff like that. He also bragged about, like, seeing a woman out somewhere and then running her information through police systems for personal reasons. He says, quote, can't wait to look this cunt up at work tonight. Which also you're not supposed to do. You're supposed to have a reason to run somebody's plates.
Yeah.
That information is supposed to log somewhere. You're supposed to be able to see who pulled it up and why they pulled it up and, like, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Does Canton just not do that? Do they just, like, let you run fucking wild and you can look in anybody's information?
It seems that they just, there are no checks or balances or supervision, oversight, nothing.
And there's, no accountability, like, none of that.
It's really seeming like the He-Man Woman Haters Club, except not exclusive to hating women only.
Literally,
maybe just the He-Man Haters Club.
Yeah, exactly. So there's another detail in the complaint. Back in 2013, while Massachusetts State Police was running the background check to hire Proctor, there are some messages to his friends. On February 26, 2013, he writes to his friends, quote, hey, dickheads. Just wanted to give you two a heads up that you guys may get a call from a state trooper named Scott Cooper, who is doing my background check. Don't know, he wrote who far, but he meant how far. They are going to go with this stuff, but didn't want to have this guy catch you off guard. And his friend responded, no problem. But what are we supposed to say? Last time the BPD, Boston Police Department lady, was grilling me for exact dates as to when and how long you lived in Brighton, how we paid rent, to who, etc. Anything specific we should be aware of. And Proctor said, quote, that lady was an absolute cunt rag N-word who had it in for Bear, referring to himself in the third person. He apparently, one of his nicknames is Bear in his friend group, and another one is Chip, I think, or maybe somebody else is Chip. I don't fucking know, but
okay.
Well, anyway.
That's giving me, what's that Will Ferrell movie with Eva Mendes in it, where Gator needs his gat?
Yeah, Gator, yes. Okay. It's so annoying. Right. So he's like, you know, this woman had it in for Bear. Talked to this guy for a half hour today, and I would be shocked if he pulled the same shit as her just from how he acted with me on the phone. Now, he, in fact, did not pull the same shit as her because they decided to hire him. What's interesting to me is that BPD did not hire him, which is why he was applying at MSP. So they obviously found something that they were like, this is not going to fly. He was hired by MSP. And then 4 years later in 2017, he writes another text to his friends and he goes, no idea how I passed the background.
Wow. Okay.
So again, we're seeing this institutional, like,
so this was alive before he got there, it seems. At least to some degree.
And it allowed him to flourish, essentially. So I have to wonder, like, why the BPD did not move forward with hiring him. That feels very interesting to me, but, you know, I don't know. All right, so the Bristol complaint doesn't just say that Proctor and Goode were bigoted. And y'all, I gave you this much. There's, like, this much. There's so much. You can read the full complaint. It's 87 pages long. It is disgusting. It is horrific. It is the worst thing you'll ever see.
Someone's lawyer was feeling spicy.
But it incorporates the complaint, word for word, a separate 54-page federal lawsuit that lays out exactly how the complaint says bias then turned into a manufactured case. So the federal complaint's core allegation is that the people inside the house where John O'Keefe was last seen, the Alberts, the McCabe's, and Brian Higgins, these are the house defendants, agreed on a plan to say that John O'Keefe, quote unquote, the guy, never went inside the house. That is a direct quote from one of their texts in one of their text threads. Tell them the guy never went inside the house. Matt McCabe said that in his group text with these people. Now, I have to reiterate, John O'Keefe was supposed to be a dear friend to them.
Yeah.
Tell them the guy never came inside the house. Okay. That they moved his body to make it look like a vehicle strike, and then investigators just went along with it rather than investigating them. And again, they violated the rules of how they do investigations on every single fucking level. They didn't separate anybody to interview them. They interviewed them together or all in the same areas. They didn't record any of these interviews. They did reports on these interviews sometimes years later. And what's really interesting is, like, when I watched the Brian Walsh trial, Michael Proctor was involved in that investigation too. Every single one of those interviews was recorded. Now, they did some funky shit with the search warrants, which ended up not amounting to anything. The judge was like, whatever. And I think Brian Walsh was guilty, but that's what can happen. That guy, he could have gone free if Proctor had done some shit, and if any of this affects then any other conviction that he's been involved with, like, these defense attorneys are going to want this information.
Yeah.
And there is another case going on right now, Miles King, who is a black man who is accused of murder. That case has been dragging on for years and years. There are lots of search warrant problems. Michael Proctor investigated that case. But look at all the bias we have against black people.
Yeah.
That's not good for that case. And if Miles King did murder somebody, now what?
It's tainted everything.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, it makes me think of, it's different, but it makes me think of, what is it, the medical examiner is it Boulder? Like, all this has come out that she was not running samples or was like skewing
and she
data.
Was like, skewing
and
the data.
She was like high up. Yeah. And it, like, I think wasn't the John Bonet case even somehow like connected to some of that?
Yeah,
and, like,
I think so.
Like all of these things, and it has now tainted every single thing that she's touched. Whether she did it properly in that instance or not, we now have doubt about every single thing she touched. Similar to Michael Proctor, I now have doubt about every single thing that you have touched because you have such a long history of these biases and these, just flouting the rules and doing whatever. This Miles King guy, maybe he did do it, but maybe now we have to let him go because you've royally fucked this up, Michael Proctor.
Because you didn't follow the procedure you were supposed to.
Exactly.
And all of this bias comes out. So that affects then, like, Miles King's attorney in her complaint is like, or in her, one of the hearings or whatever, Rosemary Scapiccio, she's like phenomenal.
Yeah.
She was like, he gave weight to white witnesses. He discredited black witnesses. He sometimes didn't even interview black witnesses. He didn't care what they had to say. He didn't give it any weight. He did, he didn't investigate it equally across the board. He just decided whatever a black person said was not true and whatever a white person said was true, took their word for it, didn't vet shit. You can't do that.
And that means the victim doesn't get justice.
Exactly.
Because whether it was this person or not this person, this victim does not get justice because you did not properly investigate it.
Yes. Exactly.
And that's not okay.
It's not okay. It's not okay. So some of the claims about the manufactured evidence and the kind of conspiracy include, quote, after leaving the police station, so remember, Brian Higgins, after he left the Albert home, he went to Canton Police Department. After leaving the police station, Brian Higgins and Brian Albert continued to coordinate their stories by calling each other multiple times in the early morning hours and ultimately spoke with each other on their cell phones at 2:22 a.m. Later, both Brian Albert and Higgins denied the existence of these phone calls. They are in their goddamn phone records, but they didn't happen, okay?
Yeah.
And when confronted with their existence by a separate law enforcement agent, quote, a non-MSP and non-CPD law enforcement agency, this is the feds. The FBI investigated the investigation into this case, which is how we figured out Proctor was fucked up in the first place. Anyway, at a separate proceeding, they coordinated the same exact lie, falsely claiming that the multiple calls and answers, they answered calls, they hung up those calls, they called each other back again, and then answered that call again, were just, quote unquote, butt dials. All of them.
How many butt dials
Lots
do
of
you
butt
have
dials.
consecutively in a
Mhm.
row?
And butt answers. And then Jen
Yeah.
McCabe had a bunch of butt dials because she called John O'Keefe's phone at some point around the 12:30 to 1 a.m. time frame. She called his phone like 7 or 8 times in a row. She says those were butt dials. She's like, I don't remember doing that. That was butt dials. Are you fucking kidding me?
How
All
many?
of the butts in Canton,
I was about to say, what is going on with the butts in Canton?
they do be dialing. I don't know. But so remember, that was 2:22 that they talked to each other a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
At 2:27 a.m., Jen McCabe's phone performed a Google search that was Haas long to die in the cold. She misspelled the first word.
Mhm.
So 5 minutes after they're coordinating, well, allegedly coordinating their stories,
Yeah.
but they are on the phone and they are physically talking to each other. We know that those calls connected, but they say they don't remember that and that they were butt dials. And then after the second trial, they finally got some of the video of Brian Higgins at CPD that night. He said he went there to move vehicles around. Again, he's drunk as fuck, okay? But he went to go do admin work and then he moved vehicles around, whatever. He is seen out in the parking lot getting into vehicles. I think he does move a couple, but he's getting a big bag out of one and moving it from here to there, whatever. But he's walking around and you can clearly see that he's on his phone. Like the light of the phone is like up next to his face. And he's like, no, I don't.
Why do we
have any
need to be
idea.
moving vehicles at 2:22 in the morning?
He said it was for the storm, but yeah, why would you not have done that earlier? Why are you doing that now? You're drunk.
Yeah, and are there not other police officers at the station right now, or did we shut down the Canton PD at 2:22 in the morning?
No, yeah, there were other people there. So.
But they were busy, I guess. They couldn't move
And
the
it doesn't
vehicles.
seem like a federal agent would need to man their parking. That seems like none of his, but he just rents an office there. So not rents it, but he just has an office there because he's best friends with at that time, the chief of police, Ken Berkowitz, who's now passed away, whatever. The complaint also alleges that investigators never processed the house forensically, no fingerprints, no blood evidence, no photographs of the interior, and they didn't even walk inside for nearly a week. What's also interesting to me, because after both trials, I went back and watched Karen Reed's arraignment when she was first arrested, which was like February 2022, days after this occurred, right? And ADA Adam Lally, who prosecuted the first trial, he did not do the second one. He also had to get on the stand and answer some questions in the Miles King case about discovery violations, which never went anywhere. That's a whole fucking thing. He could not have cared less. He was like, I don't know. I asked him again. I don't know. Institutional rot. It goes all the way up to the fucking DA. I'm telling you. Well, probably more. Anyway, he said in the arraignment that Michael Proctor did go to 34 Fairview that day, January 29, 2022. He's like, no, he's the investigator. He was assigned the case. He went to the thing. He, did all the stuff. He processed the scene, all of that stuff. And then they get to the trial. And during the trial, they went hard on that Michael Proctor never went to that scene. Now, why would they do that? Why would they say that? At the arraignment, they said he did. They also said at the arraignment they had ring camera footage of her backing into him.
Which they did not.
They did not. It was not true. But they went hard during both of those trials to, first of all, say he wasn't the lead investigator. Multiple MSP troopers were like, I wouldn't call him lead. We don't really have the lead investigator. I wouldn't call him the lead investigator. He was just one of the investigators. Blah, blah, blah. We all worked equally and blah, blah, blah.
That's not how it works. There should be a lead investigator on each case.
And of course there is. Of course there is. It's fucking stupid. And then Yuri Buchanan gets up there and he's Proctor's supervisor. And he's like, well, I know he didn't go to 34 Fairview because he was with me all day. We went everywhere together and he never went there. He wouldn't have had time to get there. Okay. So the prosecution alleged in the first trial, the whole first trial, that Karen Reed hit John O'Keefe at 12:45 a.m. And Jen McCabe testified that Karen's SUV was still at 34 Fairview around that time as well, because she would look out and see the car, that it had moved or it hadn't moved or blah, 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 but he still hadn't come in. And then she would text, where are you? Are you coming in? Park behind me, blah, blah, blah. So she's sending those text messages at this 12:45 time frame. And they're saying that's when he was hit. But then it comes out during some of the forensic digital data that Karen Reed's phone auto-connected to the Wi-Fi at John's house, which it's not close enough to the house that she could connect to it, at 12:36 a.m. So she could not have been at 34 Fairview at 12:45 a.m. So in their closing argument, they just removed the 12:45 a.m. time frame altogether. And they were just like, she hit him. Obviously, she hit him. So it further alleges that Michael Proctor texted his own sister, Courtney, who was friends with a member of the Albert family, Julie Albert. And used her as a back channel to share investigation details while the Alberts were discussing. So Julie was texting Courtney, who is like one of her good friends. Julie babysat Michael Proctor's kids. Julie Albert's son Colin was the ring bearer in Michael Proctor's wedding, I believe, or they were like in a wedding together where he was a ring bearer. They are close family friends. They tried to diminish that hardcore in the trial and all the things, but they are family friends, right? And Julie and Courtney talked a lot. And so Julie was texting with Courtney and was like, oh, we want to get, you know, Michael a thank you gift after this is all over, which for how he's handling things. Why would you need to get him if he's just doing his job, why would you get him a fucking gift?
Yeah, that's weird.
And Courtney tells Proctor they want to get you a gift, and he goes, oh, just get Elizabeth something, his wife. Just get her something.
That's so thoughtful.
It doesn't make any sense. Now, there is the damning allegation that the surveillance video from the police garage, which they call the Sally Port, or if you're from Boston, the garage of Canton PD, which is where, okay, if you're conflicted off the case, why did they bring your vehicle, the vehicle in the case, to the Canton Sally Port? But anyway, where her SUV taillight was examined was edited. There's a 42-minute gap that had been deleted from one camera. And then footage from the other camera was inverted left to right in a way that let Yuri Buchanan testify that, oh yeah, see, nobody's near that taillight. So you can see that nobody ever got near it. So of course it couldn't have been tampered with. But then when the defense got up there, they were like, this video is inverted. It's backwards. So actually what's right is left and what's left is right. And he's like, okay, yeah, I get that. Then we have Brian Albert and Brian Higgins both destroying their phones after a preservation order was handed down from the court. Brian Higgins drove to a military base where he broke the phone apart, cut the SIM card, and dumped it in different dumpsters there.
That's not suspicious at all. People do that all the time, Torella.
They do that all the time.
All the time.
All the time. You know, and again, these are allegations and all the things, but this is what's contained in the complaint. And again, Michael Proctor was fired from the MSP because of his bias and because he had violated conditions of, you know, their policies and things like that. Now,
and I'm assuming, again, that only happened because this has gotten so much publicity.
Probably. He gets fired and then he goes, well, I'm going to appeal this. Like, I'm going to get my job back. Nobody else ever gets fired for their personal text. Like, this is crazy. So he tried to fight it with the Massachusetts Civil Service Commission. He sits through 2 full days of hearings in August of 2025. And his attorney in the Miles King case told Judge Doolin, he was like, oh, hey, because they were talking about getting more evidence from his phone. Because, again, we have some of the evidence from his phone because of the federal investigation.
Right.
Who the feds turned it over to the prosecution and the defense. And now other attorneys are like, we need to get more information because this is fucked. And so while trying to determine how much of his phone, you know, they're going to get and everything, Proctor's attorney is like, he got a new phone in February 2024. And unfortunately, he set the new phone to auto-delete all of its contents every 30 days. So there's nothing on it. There's nothing on the phone. If you wanted to get something off the phone, you couldn't. So sorry. Like, there's nothing new on it.
Yeah.
But then the Commonwealth did an extraction, and it turns out that he didn't set anything to delete his iCloud data. So then they had
all of his
13 years
iCloud
worth
data.
of iCloud data. And so that's where we get all of this. Yeah. Fucking idiot. And then 2 days after, the Commonwealth comes back and is like, actually, there's a shit ton on his phone, and it's so much that we're going to need time to go through it because there's 13 years worth of data. Proctor dropped his appeal. He was like, don't worry about that. I'm withdrawing that.
Yep, that was the move for him.
That was the move. And then his attorney dropped him as well and was like, I'm done. So he's got a new attorney now. And Alan Jackson, Karen Reed's attorney, did not mince words about the timing of that. He called Proctor's withdrawal an act of self-preservation, not accountability. And he said, quote, he learned investigators had recovered text messages from his private phone dating back years, and he wanted no part of what those messages would reveal. He didn't accept accountability. It hunted him down.
Love it.
Get it, Alan.
Love it.
So, again, there's tons of crazy shit on his phone. It is going to impact lots of other cases, I think. From this extraction came information that plays, I think, and a lot of people think, a significant role in the Bristol complaint, which is Karen Reed's complaint. And it includes Proctor's own references. Okay, here's my thing about Michael Proctor and Sean Goode. At first, I was like, these dumb bitches. They are so stupid. Why would you put this shit in writing? And then I thought, they're not dumb. I
Mhm.
mean, they are dumb, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're emboldened. They are
Yes.
safe. They
Yeah.
feel safe and protected in this bubble
Yes.
where they can say whatever they want to say and it doesn't matter. They don't think anything is going to catch up to them.
Mhm. They
So
feel entitled,
100%.
protected.
So his own references on how he performs his duties as a state trooper. And we already know that Goode was texting people like, hey, drive drunk tonight, but just don't drive drunk over here.
Yeah.
You know, I can't help you this time, which makes it sound like he's helped before.
other times. Yeah.
Yeah. So the complaint says Proctor also wasn't shy about his proclivities that made him patently unfit for service, including that more than once Proctor discussed, quote, planting coke on people.
Oh, love that.
And quote, shoving a nightstick up someone's ass.
Now, I'm sorry, what?
I don't know if that was a joke. I don't know if that was, I don't know.
Okay.
The planting coke is quite interesting to me because there was, now this is trial 2. We learned this because in trial 2, Alan Jackson made a chalk or a like demonstration thing, a chart where he was able to show each piece of glass that was found at the scene because one of the items of evidence is that John O'Keefe had left the second bar of the waterfall with a cocktail glass that he had with him. And so the prosecution is like, when he was hit by the car and he spun around and did a pirouette and he flew 30 feet and his phone stayed in his hand and the cocktail glass, I guess, flew out of his hand, whatever. Anyway, all of those things. They're saying the glass broke when he got hit by the car, allegedly. Well, then we got information about each piece of glass and its forensic testing and where it was found and who found it and all the things, okay? So they said, I have to find my notes now. There were pieces of the glass that were scattered kind of in the yard.
Okay.
There was some glass kind of almost in the roadway, like right there on the side of the road.
Okay.
And then there was like one piece of glass on the bumper of the car. Now, how in defect that glass survived the drive from 34 Fairview all the way to Brighton where Karen's parents lived and then all the way back to the Sallyport, we will never know. But
it was there.
And so those pieces of glass on the bumper did not match the other glass that they found like in the yard that they thought came from the cocktail glass. They were like forensically different.
Okay.
And then when you go and look and see who it was that recovered each of those pieces of glass, the only piece of glass that was recovered by Michael Proctor himself was the one that was on the bumper.
Oh.
And so the implication, the allegation by Karen Reed's team is, did he plant that there? Because it doesn't match the cocktail glass.
Questionable for sure.
It matches the random road glass.
Okay.
That was not presumed to be part of the case. But he's the only one that touched it, right? He's the one that recovered it. Very interesting. And now you paired that with, because initially when I first started covering this case, following this case, whatever, I was like, the likelihood that police would, I mean, yeah, I'm sure it happens, but come on, this is a stretch, right? But now we've got his text. Exactly. And there were other texts that he would say, somebody was like, did you shoot anybody today or whatever? And he's like, no, but I did pull over an N-word just for flicking a cigarette butt out the window. Like,
oh my God.
You know, stuff like that. So it's like, he's obviously abusing his power. We know that. But to have a text talking about planting evidence on somebody.
Yeah, that's pretty damning.
So the MSP has changed out their leadership. There's a new colonel. They obviously, you know, he's like, this is a super embarrassing chapter for the MSP. Like, I'm going to come in and change things and blah, 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 whatever.
Okay.
But Proctor's attorney is still like, look, I get that he sent lots of yucky texts. Ew, gross. I don't like those. But they don't mean anything. And also, the overwhelming evidence is that Karen Reed hit John O'Keefe with her SUV. So really, does it matter?
Whose overwhelming evidence? Says who? Not the jury. The jury did not say so.
The jury did not say so. No.
In fact, the jury said the opposite.
Exactly. The jury said the opposite, and so did the independent federal investigation. So, okay. That's where we kind of leave part 1. So we've got all of these lawsuits that are all swirling. We've got over a decade of documented hatred.
Yeah.
Most likely abuse of a badge and, you know, all of these things. And then a detailed allegation that the investigation itself was fabricated to protect the people who knew what happened, because there's these close personal ties and all of these things.
Yeah.
And the text messages that came out are, again, just the beginning. Like, everything that happens in this case, you're like, okay, well, that has to be the craziest part. No,
But no.
it never is. Because we're going to pick up in part 2 with the week that those texts became public. Michael Proctor, who in this lawsuit is not a defendant, he's a witness, was trying to avoid testifying under oath. So that is the lawsuit that the O'Keefe family has filed against Karen Read. We're working on depositions in that case.
Okay.
He tries to avoid that deposition, and then a month later, in a completely different hearing, the judge accuses someone of leaking his sealed personal medical information to the internet. It was a whole thing. So we're going to get into all the deposition wars. We're going to get into the judge's fury, and then a leak that nobody will admit to. And that is part 2.
All right. Well, come back Thursday, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.